Most people who lose money in a financial crisis don't lose it because they picked bad assets. They lose it because they picked the right asset at the wrong time. And that one distinction, that single shift in how you think about markets, is worth more than any stock tip, any analyst recommendation, or any financial headline you've ever read. So stay with me here, because what I'm about to walk you through is a framework that most retail investors never encounter. And it explains almost everything about why markets behave in ways that seem completely irrational. Until you understand the underlying sequence happening beneath the surface, let me start with a question. Have you ever watched gold drop during what was supposed to be a market panic? Have you ever seen stocks rally when the economy was clearly falling apart? Have you ever held cash thinking you were being smart, only to watch everything around you inflate while your purchasing power quietly disappeared? If any of that sounds familiar, you're not alone, and you're not stupid. What you were experiencing was the result of not knowing which phase of a crisis you were actually in. And that's exactly what this video is going to change. Here's the core idea, and I want you to hold on to this for the entire video. There are no universally good or bad assets, none. Not gold, not cash, not stocks, not bonds, not real estate. Every single asset class has a phase where it wins and a phase where it absolutely gets destroyed. The investors who consistently survive crises aren't the ones who found some magical safe haven. They're the ones who understood which phase they were in and positioned accordingly. If you don't understand the phase, you will always be either early, late, or just flat out wrong. Now, I want to introduce you to a framework that breaks a financial crisis into 5 distinct phases. And before you say, okay, another framework, hear me out, because this is an abstract theory. This is observable, it's repeatable, and once you see it, you cannot unsee it. The 5 phases are the pre-crisis phase, then the liquidity shock, then the policy response, then economic deterioration, and finally what I call the monetary reset or recovery. Each of these phases has a completely different dominant force driving it. Each one rewards a different type of asset, and each one punishes assets that worked brilliantly in the previous phase. This is why most investors are perpetually confused. They're using yesterday's playbook in today's phase. Let's dig into each one. Phase 1 is the pre-crisis phase, and if I had to give it a subtitle, it would be the imbalance phase. This is the period right before everything breaks, and here's the cruel irony of it. It feels amazing. Credit is expanding. Capital is flowing freely. Risk assets are going up. Real estate is booming. New narratives are everywhere, whether it's artificial intelligence, crypto, commercial real estate, whatever the era's favorite story happens to be. The perceived level of risk in markets is extremely low because most market participants are looking at prices and saying, see, everything's fine. But what's actually happening beneath the surface is that imbalances are quietly building. Leverage is accumulating. Capital is being misallocated into ideas and sectors that sound compelling but haven't been stress tested by reality. The gap between asset prices and underlying fundamentals keeps widening, but nobody cares because everything keeps going up. In this phase, the winners are obvious in hindsight. Equities, especially growth-oriented equities, perform exceptionally well. Real estate appreciates. Risk assets broadly do well. If you're holding a concentrated growth portfolio during this phase, you look like a genius. Now here's something important, something that trips up a lot of people who think of themselves as sophisticated investors. Gold typically underperforms during this phase. Cash loses purchasing power to inflation. The assets that people think of as safe or defensive are actually the ones getting left behind while the party keeps going. That's the setup. And the longer this phase extends, the more painful the next one becomes. Phase 2 is where things get violent, and I mean that almost literally. This is the liquidity shock phase, sometimes called the sell everything phase, and the name tells you exactly what happens. Something cracks. It could be a credit event, a bank failure, a geopolitical shock, a policy mistake. It doesn't really matter what the specific trigger is. What matters is what happens next. Fear spikes suddenly and dramatically. Investors and institutions that are leveraged start receiving margin calls. They need cash, not in a few weeks, right now. And when you need cash right now, you sell whatever you can, not whatever makes strategic sense. You sell whatever has a liquid market, and that means everything goes down together. This is where people get completely confused because they watch assets that shouldn't be correlated all falling at the same time. Stocks are down, commodities are down. And then here's the part that shocks almost everyone who hasn't studied this. Gold goes down too, often by somewhere in the range of 10 to 20%. People are completely blindsided by this. They bought gold specifically as a safe haven. They thought it would protect them when markets panicked. And then they watch it drop alongside everything else. And then they conclude that gold doesn't work as a safe haven. And that conclusion is wrong. It's based on a misunderstanding of what gold actually does and which phase it's designed for. The critical insight here is that gold is not a short-term safe haven. It is a post-liquidity safe haven. Gold protects you in a different phase entirely, and we'll get to that. But during the liquidity shock, everyone needs cash, and gold is liquid, so gold gets sold. In phase 2, the winners, at least temporarily, are cash and the US dollar. That's it. Everything else is getting hit. The dollar often strengthens dramatically because global investors are all scrambling for the same thing at the same time, and that thing is dollar liquidity. If you were sitting in cash during this phase, you feel incredibly smart. But here's the traps, and this is where a lot of people make a massive mistake. Sitting in cash after the liquidity shock does not protect you from what comes next, because what comes next is phase 3. Phase 3 is the policy response phase, and this is where central banks and governments step in with everything they have. Interest rates get cut. Quantitative easing programs get launched. Fiscal stimulus packages get announced. Essentially, enormous amounts of artificial liquidity get injected into the financial system to stop the bleeding. And it works, at least on the surface. Markets stop falling, equities stage a sharp rally, risk assets bounce back. The news flow starts to turn more positive. Some analysts start calling bottoms. The people who were holding cash in phase 2 now start to feel like they missed the recovery. But here's the critical hidden risk of phase 3. And it's the most dangerous misconception in all of investing. The system doesn't actually heal during this phase, it gets supported. There's a massive difference between those two things. Real economic damage is still accumulating beneath the surface. Business revenues are under pressure, credit quality is deteriorating, the structural imbalances that caused the crisis in the first place haven't been resolved. They've been papered over with stimulus, and this creates false confidence on a massive scale. The equity rally in phase 3 makes people think the crisis is over. They start rotating back into growth assets, into risk assets, into exactly the types of positions that are about to get hurt again in phase 4. Phase 3 creates the setup for the next wave of pain. And that brings us to phase 4, which I genuinely believe is the most important and most misunderstood phase of any financial crisis. This is the economic deterioration phase, and if phase 2 is where markets took the hit, phase 4 is where the real economy takes the hit. Growth slows, unemployment rises, consumer spending weakens. Corporate profit margins compress because costs stay elevated even as revenues slow. And crucially, inflation tends to persist through this phase even as the economy is weakening. That combination of slowing growth and sticky inflation is what creates stagflation. And stagflation is uniquely devastating because it breaks the normal rules that investors rely on. Think about how most people think about bonds. Traditionally, bonds are supposed to perform well when economies slow down because central banks cut rates and bond prices rise. But in a stagflation environment, inflation is still elevated, which means real bond returns are negative. You're earning interest, but losing purchasing power faster than you're earning it. So bonds don't protect you the way conventional wisdom suggests they should. Meanwhile, equities, especially growth equities, get hit hard in this phase because the high valuations from phase 1 and phase 3 were built on expectations of strong future growth. And now that growth isn't materializing, the narrative collapses, multiples compress, real estate is illiquid and starts feeling pressure from both tighter credit and weakening demand. So what actually wins in phase 4? This is where the framework really delivers its insight. Gold is the primary winner in this phase. Hard assets with genuine pricing power also perform. Selective commodities, particularly energy, can outperform because they have real-world demand that doesn't disappear just because financial markets are stressed. The common thread among phase 4 winners is that they preserve real purchasing power in an environment where both financial assets and traditional safe havens are failing. Silver, interestingly, tends to underperform relative to gold in the early part of this phase because silver has significant industrial demand, and industrial activity weakens as the economy slows. Gold, which is more monetary in nature and less dependent on industrial cycles, holds up much better. This is the phase most investors misunderstand. They bought gold when the crisis first became obvious, which was phase 2, and they watched it drop. They sold it. They concluded it doesn't work. And then they completely missed the phase where gold was actually designed to protect them. Or they held cash through phase 2 and phase 3, feeling smart. And then phase 4 arrives and inflation erodes their purchasing power, while their cash earns nothing in real terms. This is the trap. Phase 5 is the monetary reset or recovery phase. Eventually, something shifts. Either inflation breaks decisively, perhaps because a severe enough recession finally destroys demand, or the monetary system undergoes some kind of structural reset. Policy shifts again. A new cycle begins. And in this phase, equities and risk assets begin a genuine new bull market. Commodities can recover broadly, and gold, which was the star performer of phase 4, tends to stabilize or actually underperform as capital rotates back into growth assets. The cycle is complete, and it starts again. Now, I want to pause here and deliver what I think is the single most powerful insight in this entire video, because everything else builds to this point. Most investors don't lose money because they chose the wrong asset. Most investors lose money because they chose the right asset at the wrong time. Read that again. The right asset at the wrong time. Someone who held gold through phase 2 got crushed even though gold was the right long-term play. Someone who held cash through phase 4 preserved nominal value while losing real value. Someone who rotated into growth equities during the phase 3 rally felt brilliant right up until phase 4 arrived. The asset wasn't wrong. The timing was wrong. The timing was wrong because they didn't understand which phase they were in. Now let's connect this framework to where we actually are right now, because this isn't just historical theory. This is directly relevant to decisions investors need to be making in the current environment. Look at the sequence of what has happened over the past several years. The pre-crisis imbalance phase was the extended period of near zero interest rates and abundant credit that inflated asset prices across the board, from equities to real estate to private assets to crypto. The liquidity shock happened, credit markets seized up, assets sold off broadly, dollar strength spiked, and yes, even gold had a difficult period during the worst of the selling pressure. Then came the policy response, where central banks navigated a complex balancing act between addressing inflation and preventing a complete financial system breakdown, and markets staged significant recoveries off their lows. That policy response phase has largely played out. Where does that leave us now? Based on this framework, the indicators are pointing toward phase 4. Inflation has proven far more persistent than almost anyone predicted. Growth is slowing in meaningful ways across major economies. Consumer balance sheets that were cushioned by pandemic-era savings are now increasingly stretched. Corporate margins are under pressure as the cost reductions that happened in 2022 and 2023 don't have much further to go. Structural imbalances, particularly in commercial real estate and in certain sectors of the credit market, are becoming increasingly visible. The consequences of the earlier phases are now starting to show up in the real economy rather than just in financial markets. This is not the beginning of the crisis. What we are experiencing right now is the phase where the consequences of everything that came before actually appear in the economy. And that distinction matters enormously for how you should be thinking about your portfolio. So let me give you the thinking framework rather than specific picks, because the logic is far more valuable than any individual recommendation. When you're navigating phase 2, the liquidity shock, the mindset should be pure survival. Liquidity is king. Nominal value preservation matters more than anything else. Cash and dollar-denominated assets are the relevant tools. Being wrong on timing in this phase costs you a lot very quickly, so the priority is not losing rather than winning. But when you're in phase 4, the economic deterioration phase, the mindset shifts entirely. The priority becomes preservation of purchasing power, not preservation of nominal value. And that distinction is everything. Cash preserves nominal value. If you put $100 in the bank and leave it there, you will still have $100 next year. But if inflation is running at 5 or 6 or 7%, that $100 has lost a meaningful portion of its real value. Gold, on the other hand, preserves real value over time. It doesn't pay interest. It doesn't generate earnings. But it maintains purchasing power against currency debasement in a way that cash cannot. So the phase 4 framework leads you towards some clear directional conclusions. Hard assets with pricing power over financial assets that depend on stable economic conditions. Real value over nominal value. Assets that benefit from monetary debasement over assets that get eroded by it. That doesn't mean putting everything into one asset class. It means understanding which assets are aligned with the dominant forces of the current phase and positioning in that direction rather than fighting against it. There's a deeper psychological dimension to all of this that I want to address, because understanding the framework intellectually is only half the battle. The other half is being able to resist the emotional pulls that make it so hard to actually execute on this kind of thinking in real time. During phase 1, everything is going up, and you feel pressure to chase whatever is performing best. The assets that will protect you in phase 4 look boring and unnecessary when everything is rallying. During phase 2, fear is overwhelming, and the urge to sell everything and hold cash feels completely rational. During phase 3, the market rally creates powerful FOMO, and the narrative shifts to recovery mode, and you want to rotate back into growth before you, quote-unquote, miss it again. And then phase 4 arrives, and the people who chased performance in phase 1, panic sold in phase 2, and rotated back in phase 3 are in exactly the wrong position for what's happening. The framework creates a distance between you and those emotional pulls. When you can name which phase you're in, you can ask yourself whether your instinct to buy, sell, or hold is aligned with the dominant forces of that phase, or whether you're being driven by the emotional energy of the moment. That's not a guarantee of perfect decisions, nothing is, but it shifts your decision-making from reactive to strategic. Let me also address one of the most common mistakes I see, which is the static categories problem. Investors tend to develop fixed mental models about assets. Gold is a safe haven. Bonds are safe. Real estate always goes up. Growth stocks are the best long-term investment. These become almost religious beliefs, held independent of context. And the framework I've walked you through today completely dismantles the idea that any of these static categories are reliably true. They're true sometimes. They're true in specific phases. The moment you start thinking about assets as always good or always bad, rather than good or bad in a specific context, you've already lost the plot. Markets are not static. They are dynamic systems moving through sequences. Crises are not single events that you either dodge or don't. They are multi-phase processes where different rules apply at different times. And the investors who consistently navigate them successfully are not the ones who got lucky with a prediction. They're the ones who understood the sequence well enough to stay roughly oriented, even when individual data points were confusing or contradictory. Here's what I want you to take away from everything we've covered. First, there are no universally safe or universally dangerous assets. Context is everything, and the context is the phase. Second, gold dropping in a liquidity shock is not a signal that gold doesn't work. It's a signal that you're in phase 2, not phase 4. Third, a market rally during the policy response phase does not mean the crisis is over. It means phase 3 is doing exactly what phase 3 always does, which is creating false confidence. Fourth, the real economic damage typically shows up in phase 4 after markets have already staged a recovery, which is precisely why so many investors get caught off guard by it. Fifth, the mindset shift from nominal value preservation to real value preservation is one of the most important transitions an investor can make as conditions evolve. And sixth, and maybe most importantly of all, if you understand which phase you are in, you understand which play makes sense. You stop guessing, you stop reacting, you start positioning. That's the difference between the investors who consistently survive crises and the ones who look back and say they knew something was coming but couldn't figure out what to do about it. The biggest mistake isn't ignorance about a specific asset. The biggest mistake is thinking in static categories when you should be thinking in sequences. Markets move in phases, crises move in phases, and the moment you internalize that, your entire approach to investing changes, not because you suddenly have a crystal ball, but because you have a map. And even an imperfect map is infinitely more useful than no map at all when you're trying to navigate terrain that most people find completely disorienting. If this framework resonated with you, if it shifted something in how you think about markets and crises and asset allocation, then share it with someone who needs to hear it. The number of people making financial decisions right now based on the wrong framework, based on static categories and outdated mental models, is significant. And the cost of that in real purchasing power, in retirement savings and financial security is enormous. Understanding the phase isn't a guarantee of perfect outcomes, but it is the closest thing to an edge that most investors will ever have access to. And now you have it.